The Let's Go Live button. So let's wait for the stream to fire up all across the fruited plain of the internet. Before we go ahead and get started, we have some serious business to attend to. And before we jump into it, we got to make sure the tubes are working. And it looks like, I think we see ourselves over there, and we think I see ourselves over here. And I think Rumble's working and Twitter's working, which is great news. That means we can go ahead and get started. So let's do it, shall we? Hello, my friends, and welcome back to yet another episode of Watching the Watchers Live. My name is Robert Gouveia. I am a criminal defense attorney broadcasting from the Valley of the Sun, deep in downtown Phoenix, Arizona. And today we are talking about derangement, about individuals in the Trump trial who might be a little bit off keister as they are waging their lawfare war against the former president. And so we are going to go through that in detail today, after we check out what's going on with the Proud Boys, because we had some interesting questions get dropped. We're going to go through them. We are now on jury note number 7. And these aren't simple jury notes. The jury notes that we had seen previously talking about staplers and what exhibit was that. These are pretty complex jury notes. In fact, they're asking about some legal definitions and instructions about what to do if the jury can't reach unanimity about the charges. Uh-oh. Does that mean we're going to get a split jury, a split verdict, or a hung jury? I don't know. So we're going to go all into that. We have a little bit of an update. They actually brought the attorneys back into court to have a discussion on this. And boy, man, if you could imagine, if you could just fathom the government losing the seditious conspiracy charges on that, it gets a little bit exciting. So we'll come back into that and see what happened in court, all in the first segment. Before we turn our attention over to the Trump trial, we are in day 5 of this thing, and it's moving quickly. And if you want to follow along at home and sort of get, all of the evidence and see what we're seeing and watch it on your own time, or share it with a friend or family member and say, hey, here's the evidence that we're talking about. If you have got questions about it, you can send them to spotlightlawyer.com/Trump, and they can access this mind map. This entire thing is available. And we've been chronicling all the various days, day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4 was yesterday. And we had an amazing motion for a mistrial, which was submitted by Donald Trump's defense. And so if you missed that one, I'd really encourage you to watch that, because it details from Trump's defense team all of the problems that they've identified as this trial has been proceeding. And so that was yesterday, and we should have a clip of that coming out shortly, so you can just get right to that clip. Should be published hopefully tonight. So that will be coming. Today, we're going to be looking at trial day 5. We've got a bunch of witnesses to go to. So we'll have Lisa Birnbach, who's an author. She also had a podcast, and she said that Donald Trump is like an STD, which is not a very nice thing to call somebody. She also had a long interview with Anderson Cooper we'll hear about. There was another Trump accuser. This accuser says that Trump did something to her on an airplane, back in the 1970s, somewhere, give or take. 1978, 1979, age 37 is when she when this happened. And so we'll hear what she had to say. She was also on CNN talking about it. We had another witness called Robert Salerno, who worked back at the Bergdorf Goodman location back in the mid-90s. He was retired now, but apparently he saw Donald Trump. We have a doctor named Dr. Leibowitz, clinical psychologist, who's going to come in and talk about trauma. And then, of course, we'll go to the trial thread and hear what Inner City Press had for us. But as you see, a lot of witnesses here, a lot of different people, all testifying against the former president. And we will get into all of it and more. But my friends, if you want to be a part of the program, the best place you can do that is by joining as a member. And you can join us at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. There's an amazing community over there where we do member-only streams. We had a great member-only morning stream today where we hit some of the other stuff that we can't talk about here on the show just due to time. And we'd love it if you joined us. You can post different stories there, comment, like, and share your stories at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. You can also join as a member on YouTube. And on YouTube, you can get the access to our private Telegram group, which is where you can join the chat even when the show ends. The chat never ends on Telegram, my friends. So With that said, let's get ourselves properly nutrified because we've got some business to attend to, and we can't do it without our friends over at fieldofgreens.com, which is where you can get your real organic superfood. Because, of course, we'd all like to lose some of those leftover pandemic pounds. Gosh, come on already. But how sick are you of all the ads for weight loss pills and fad diets? We've all been there. We've all done that. And we know they don't work. But you know what does? Eating 5 healthy servings of fruits and vegetables every day. You do that and the weight would probably just fall right off. But vegetables and fruit, who's got time to prepare that every day? Not me. Instead, let's talk about Field of Greens. Now, Field of Greens is a science-backed formula, very specific fruits and vegetables that you're not going to find in any other product. Proper nutrition reboots your metabolism so you burn calories faster and lose weight a healthier way. And Field of Greens is the only brand backed by a better health promise. Yes, you're going to look healthier and you're going to feel healthier fast, but the greater proof is going to come at your next visit when you check out your doctor and he checks you out and he says, wow, you've lost weight. Whatever you're doing, keep it up. And so let's get you started. Go on over to fieldofgreens.com. Very easy website, fieldofgreens.com. There's a whole smorgasbord of amazing things there for health, for joints, for sleep, for energy, other weight loss things. Check them out, fieldofgreens.com, and save 15% with code Robert when you check out so you can save. And we love it when you save. All right, we had to tell the thermostat to turn the air conditioning down. It's a little warm in here. Sheesh. All right, so we have a lot of business to attend to, and let's get into it, starting with the Proud Boys trial, because we do have some news here. So let's jump into it. The Proud Boys trial continues with jury deliberations, and it's going on and on and on. And now, with jury notes 6 and 7, we're asking ourselves, are we going to get a split verdict? Are they going to say that they're guilty on some counts and not guilty on other counts? And what happens if those not guilty counts are the most important counts in the world to the U.S. government, which is the seditious conspiracy charges? Because without that, their whole fake insurrection narrative goes out the window. So what happens if it is a split verdict, or what happens if it's a hung jury and they can't come to conclusions on any of the charges? Do we do this whole thing over again? Does the government roll over in defeat? We'll see. But the jury hasn't come to a conclusion yet. They are asking questions. Yesterday, we saw jury notes 5 and 6 come in. Actually, yesterday we saw jury notes 4 and 5 come in. And there was no response when we were here on the show, but we were able to pull those up. Remember the jury note 4, the jurors are sitting in there, they're deliberating. They're like, I think he's guilty. I think they're not guilty. I think he's guilty on this one, but not conspiracy. They're all deliberating. And you know how group projects are. They're a lot of work. And so they've got this list that they put out yesterday. We've got a ton of appointments. Monday next week, Friday this week, another one Monday next week, Tuesday and Wednesday next week, all these different appointments. And we were asking ourselves, what the heck is the judge going to do with this? Is he going to say, okay, I guess we're accommodating you? And I think he might. We'll see. But there was no official order that was entered into the court docket. And you can see this is the actual docket. That was jury note 4. And normally in the pattern of this, what you'll see is the jury note comes in, then you see a court response. So you see the similar pattern here on May 1st. Entry 779 was jury note 5. Then we get entry 781, which is jury note response. 5 comes in, response to 5. We got 4 come in, but no response to 4. Why is that? Well, the judge may have addressed it with them in person or have just said, we'll comply. That sounds good. Thank you for the notice. So that is what happened yesterday. The jurors also sent in jury note 5. Can you please provide the exhibit numbers for the Donahoe water bottle throwing examples? And we thought to ourselves, that's an interesting question because Donahoe is not a charged defendant in this case at all. The other Proud Boys are. So why is the jury asking about a non-defendant and about him specifically throwing water bottles? Curious. Now, the response to that was, sure, here you go. The government exhibits that you requested are 440, 440AX, and so on. And so we don't need to spend much more time on that. They identified what they identified. Now, jury note 6 came in. And here's what they say. And you remember this handwriting. This person is basically the official scribe of the group. Says, all right, dear court, we would like clarification on a few items here. For counts 1 through 4, those are the conspiracy charges. The conspiracy charges that have more than one goal listed, can one agreed upon objective of the conspiracy simultaneously satisfy both goals? Whoa, we're getting into the nitty-gritty here. This is interesting. And the jury says now, we also did not receive instructions on what to do if the jury does not reach unanimity on a charge. How should we proceed in this scenario? Uh-oh. Government prosecutors don't like that. They don't like that at all. We might have a holdout in there. And when you juxtapose number 2 with number 1, they're asking about the conspiracy charge. They're asking about not being able to agree about the conspiracy charge. So the judge actually typed out a response to this one. And here is what he said. He said, all right, ladies and gentlemen of the jury. He says, first, as you have already been instructed here, the object of a conspiracy is the illegal goal that the conspirators agree and hope to achieve. Very ambiguous. In counts 1 and 4, the charged conspiracies involve 2 separate goals. The government is not required to prove goals of the conspiracy. However, the government must prove at least one of those 2 goals beyond a reasonable doubt. If the government has not proved that at least one of the goals was a goal of the charged conspiracy, then your verdict must be not guilty. So if the government says that one of their goals was the goal of the conspiracy, but you don't think it was a goal of the conspiracy, in other words, they're saying that the conspiracy was to insurrect America or interfere with the peaceful transfer of power or obstruct the lawful order functional of government and all the things, right? Well, if you don't think that one of their goals was to disrupt the counting of the votes or to interfere with Mike Pence or whatever, then you can consider that not to be a part of the conspiracy that wasn't met. And the government has to get one of the goals. As to either or both goals, which you may find the conspirators agreed to promote, you must be unanimous on that sub-element. Like if you can't agree on that, this is gone. So to answer your specific question, with respect to the conspiracies charged in counts 1 and count 4, evidence of the same objective can, if you find, satisfy both of the 2 goals of the charged conspiracies simultaneously. So one set of facts can prove 2 goals. Second, if you guys are unable to reach a unanimous decision as to some defendant or count, you might send me a note. As you've already been instructed, if you send a note, you should do so without telling me how you are divided as to the defendant or the count. Don't give me the details. Just let me know. In addition, as you have already been instructed, at any time during your deliberations, you may return a partial verdict. In other words, a verdict of guilty or not guilty with respect to any defendant on any count. So you don't have to deliver them all at once. You can take this one by one and let us know piecemeal. But interesting questions. The jury is asking about the conspiracy and about unanimity. Now we have another question that got brought up and another complex one. Look at this. They're getting into the nitty-gritty. They say, Your Honor, we would like clarification on jury instructions. On page 13, where you talk about organizations and persons not present, it states in your jury instructions, it says, you should not make any inferences or speculate about other individuals you have heard about in this trial or whether they have been charged with crimes. Okay. So we shouldn't consider external evidence or make inferences about anything that's outside of this. Okay, they say. However, count 8, which is regarding the illegal water bottle, that appears to require us to make inferences about a person who is not a defendant in this case. Count 8. Can you provide clarification on how theories of liability could potentially apply to the defendants in relation to such an individual? Whoa! What the heck kind of a question is this? A good one. A really good one. Yeah. Why aren't the government prosecutors charging other people who are not a party to this case? You're asking us to make inferences about a person who is not a defendant. That's Charles Donahoe. And remember, Charles Donahoe, they asked a question about that earlier in another note, in jury note 5. Please provide the exhibit numbers for the Donahoe water bottle throwing. They look at the water bottle, him throwing water bottles, and they say, he's not being charged in this case. Why is he not being charged? And why is this guy being charged in count 8? But he's not. And the jury instructions say don't make inferences about other people, but then the count tells us to make an inference. And so we want to know about theories of liability, about how they apply to the defendants in relation to that guy. So they're asking a great question. Thank you! Exclamation point. Whew. Digging into this a little bit. So we did have some proceedings. Now Judge Kelly is back on the bench to discuss. And we go back to Roger Parloff to review. He tells us, Judge Kelly's back on the bench to discuss the responses. The defense lawyers are not all on the same page about how to respond to this. All of them prefer a less specific answer. Prosecutor is speaking about jury note 7. Judge Kelly says, it's remarkable to me the inability of lawyers in this case to shut their mouths while other lawyers are speaking. Wow. So now they recess, and Judge Kelly types up his response. And here's what his response says. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, you have been instructed on the theories of liability which apply to count 8. The court can provide no further clarification. Figure it out. You're on your own. This isn't law school, jurors. We're not educating you on theories of liability. Do your job. Signed, the judge. And so that brings us to the close of the day. They've been deliberating for 27 hours now. Deliberations tomorrow will only go until noon due to a juror commitment. And so they will be done for the day. Of course, we'll be back tomorrow to see what other jury notes they have for us and whether they return a verdict. Thanks for subscribing. We'll see you back here tomorrow. All right, my friends. So that's it on the jury from the Proud Boys. And so that means we got to turn our attention over to the Trump trial. And if you want to follow along at home, you can do that. Go to spotlightlawyer.com/Trump and you can access this mind map to get into it. And the mind map has everything from yesterday all the way up to jury selection. If you go to spotlightlawyer.com/Trump, you can just click these nodes and you can navigate around, zoom in and out, get the links, get the images, get the video files. And this also includes the other Trump investigations, like the one out of Georgia with Fani Willis and the special counsel's prosecution, which is taking place with Jack Smith and others. So follow along at home if you want to poke around any of that stuff at spotlightlawyer.com/Trump. Now, let's get into this because we've got some serious witnesses to attend to. As you can see, there's a whole slew of them. And we're going to get into all of them one by one. Witness 1 in Trump trial day 3 is Lisa Birnbach. She is the author that E. Jean Carroll called allegedly right after the incident happened at the Bergdorfs. Now, she testified as the first witness, had a direct examination and a cross-examination, and we've heard from her previously in this trial on other days when E. Jean Carroll was testifying. E. Jean Carroll said, I called her, and so her lawyer and her team is calling her back as a witness. We're going to hear her side of the story, what came out the other end of the phone call. Before we listen to her testimony, we want to understand more about who this individual is. Wikipedia has some details. She is the author, known for co-authoring a book called The Official Preppy Handbook. 38 weeks, #1 at the New York Times bestseller. Born Jewish family, New York, World War history of her family, New York Times. She wrote a book, appeared on the Colbert Report. Personal life, resides in Manhattan. And she said that she was contacted by E. Jean Carroll about an assault. On political grounds, Birnbach also criticized President Trump and his allies like Mark Meadows and William Barr on her official social media. All right, so even Wikipedia knows this lady hates Trump. So you go to that, you see that, and there's also some stuff that's going to come up in the middle of her testimony. One is going to be an appearance on Anderson Cooper, which we'll come back to, and the other is about a podcast that she runs or used to run called the 5 Things Podcast, which is available on YouTube, and I grabbed a clip from it that we're going to hear where she has some choice words about Donald Trump. But before we jump into that, let's, as usual, check out the trial thread, courtesy of our friend Matthew Russell Lee at Inner City Press over at innercitypress.com. And he has some good details there. If you want to really dig into the story, he's got some witness entry. He's got some on the scene video. He's there physically. So he's recording videos of who's coming and going and how they're entering. He's got the actual reaction from watching this. We're reading his amazing reporting, but if you really want to get the nuts and bolts, make sure you're following him at Inner City Press. And so he tells us that trial gets started. And our first witness is Lisa Birnbach. Judge enters. All rise. All right. Please be seated. Okay. Yeah, all right. We're back. Anything preliminary? Okay, fine. All right. Plaintiff, Miss Carroll, call your first witness, please. Your Honor, the government calls Lisa Birnbach, the lady we just saw. Carroll's lawyer says, all right, Miss Birnbach, thanks for being here today with us. Now, Miss Birnbach, how long have you known Miss Carroll? She says, oh gosh, I don't know, 32, 33 years. Did Miss Carroll tell you anytime during that time about an encounter she had at Bergdorf's? She says, yes, she did. It was in the spring of 1996, I think. They don't even know the dates. Thank you. Now, Ms. Birnbach, have you been published? You're an author, right? Oh, yeah, I am. Yeah, I've been published all over the place. Places like The New Yorker, Parade Magazine, Spy, TV Guide. Spy? What was that? She says that was a satirical magazine. Wow. And have you written any books? She says, yeah. 22, in fact. What are they about? Well, about the way we live. You know, just this and that and the other thing. Nothing political, though. What else have you done in your life, Lisa? I was a host on the VH1 show. I'm sure nobody remembers it. It was called The Whole Enchilada. Wow, so you've been in the media a long time. Wow. Now, Lisa, how did you meet Miss Carroll? She says, we had a couple of dinners with another couple. I had admired her reporting in Outside magazine. And what was Carroll's job back then? I remember that she was running the Ask E. Jean Carroll column, and she also was running a TV show by the same name. She says, I was on it once. And how did you come to know about Donald Trump? She says, well, I met Donald Trump at a party, a birthday party. And when I was there, he invited me to write a story about Mar-a-Lago. He told me he was turning it into a club. He called me about once a month to talk about this. And did you write the article? She says, yeah, I did. I traveled to Mar-a-Lago on Trump's private plane in late January 1996. I stayed 2 nights there. I had a tape recorder with me and I recorded a stream of consciousness of Mr. Trump as he gave me a tour. It was mi casa, tu casa. Wow, it sounds like an interesting trip. She's like, yeah. Now, did Donald Trump call you after the article came out? No, but one of his assistants did. And what were you doing when Miss Carroll called you about being assaulted? She said, I remember it vividly. I was feeding my children, age 6 and 3 back then. If they have the year right. If the year's wrong, then maybe they were 5 and 2. She got the time right, so they don't know whether it was 95 or 96, but she says it was between 6 and 7 p.m. And when you answered the call, what did Miss Carroll say? She said, Lisa, you're not going to believe what happened to me. She was breathing hard, sounded like she had a surge of adrenaline coming out. She told me her story about how they ended up in the lingerie department. I was just sitting there surprised. I couldn't believe what she was saying. Well, what were you thinking? She says, I thought that it was kind of nutty. You're kidding me. That is an understatement. Tell me about it. I thought that was kind of nutty. She told me she told Donald Trump, why don't you try it on? They were in a dressing room, and then he slammed her head against the wall, and then he slammed in his arm and his shoulder against her, and then he pulled down her tights. And then he penetrated her. How? With the thing. She says, I knew my children didn't know the word, but I was on the phone and I ducked out and I told her, I said, Eugene. Her kids are eating there, 6 and 3 or 5 and 2 or maybe 7 and what's the number? Whatever, who knows, who cares? Their kids are there. And she says, she steps out. Eugene Carroll, he attacked you. I'll take you to the police right now. You got attacked. I'm on my way to get you. Now, why didn't you go over there? Well, she said, Eugene Carroll said, no, I don't want to go. Interesting. Why not? Why wouldn't you want to go? I mean, if it's a true story and you just got attacked and your friend who you just called is shaking you out of your stupor, your post-attack stupor, she didn't want to go. We had a fight. She said, and so we fought. We fought back and forth about this. You should go. You got attacked. You got attacked in there. Had to step out of the room. How long was the call? Oh, I don't know. 4 minutes or so? Okay, that's a pretty quick call. Takes longer to order takeout. 4 minutes. Then I reheated and then I reheated my kids' nuggets. Probably for 4 minutes, you know? Might be a little long for a reheat, but not much time. So I said, okay, you want to go to the cops? You want to go to the cops? No, you should. Well, I don't want to. All right, well, my kids are hungry. I'm going to go throw those nuggets back in the microwave. Anything else you need from me? All right, have a great night. You want to tell anybody else about it? She says, no. She didn't want to talk about it. And so why didn't you tell anybody about it? Well, I honored it. Her lawyer says, did anyone else you knew tell you they were assaulted? Trump's lawyer says, objection, Your Honor. Anyone else you knew tell you they were assaulted? So Trump's lawyer is objecting. He's going, what? Anyone else? Like, do you have anything else? Like, maybe the next follow-up question will be, have you read any articles also about people who attacked Donald Trump? Have you heard any rumors? Have you seen any tweets about other people who've attacked Donald Trump? Judge, objection. What does a tweet have to do anything with this case at all? Judge is like, I'll allow it. Yeah, whatever. Just let it in. Is it harmful to Trump? Perfect. Let it in. Objection. I'll allow it. So the lawyer continues and asks the question. And she says, yeah. Other women friends in the mid-90s told me they had been assaulted by men. Other people have too. Did you and Miss Carroll ever discuss the assault again? ever again? Not until 2019. Isn't that curious? What happened in 2019, I wonder? Oh, yeah, Trump's running for office again. Yeah, and this whole lawfare game plan scheme starts in full effect. And so they go out and just like lawyers will get mesothelioma patients to sue on behalf of, they're finding good plaintiffs to bring under their wing for a political legal battle. Never discussed it again until she needed her witness. So from the mid-90s all the way till 2019, no conversation until, boom, we need you to come testify in a litigation lawsuit we're filing against Trump. Did she discuss any romantic relationships with you? No, she didn't. Lisa, have you donated any money to political candidates? She says, yeah, I have. Who was that? Hillary Clinton. And where were you on election night in 2016, Lisa? I was at my apartment, West End Avenue. I was there with 25 friends, and guess who else was there? E. Jean. Were there any Trump supporters there, Lisa? No. Did you have dinner, Lisa, with Miss Carroll? And Carol Martin, another person referenced? She says, yeah, we did. We went to Carmine's restaurant down on Broadway. She gave us blue envelopes with ribbons on them. She said, read it, but don't show anyone. I never read it. I felt it might create responsibilities. Now, what is that all about? Let's see if they hit that back on cross. Carroll gave Birnbach a letter with a blue ribbon, said, read it, but don't show anyone. And she said, I never read it. You believe that? Lisa, I want to ask you about this piece in the New Yorker. She says, yeah, I wrote a New Yorker magazine Talk of the Town piece about E. Jean's Hideous Men of New York tour. She didn't mention Donald Trump in it, but I did write about it. What was the title of that? She says, I don't know. I can't remember. It had the name Hideous Men on it. I can't remember it. And here it is from the New Yorker. Inner City Press pulled that up for him to go get the link. Lisa, when you saw the excerpt in the article, did it match what Miss Carroll told you in 1996? She says, yeah, it did. I called her and I told her what a good piece it was. I said, tell the fact checkers I don't want to be named. Trump was president with a following that was rude. Her lawyer says, all right, now I want to show you an exhibit here, Lisa. It's called Exhibit AJ. Was this text message up here, was this sent before or after the excerpt? I sent that after. Megan is Megan Tuhey. She's the reporter that E. Jean had sent me each chapter as an email. Where did she send you that from? She was in intensive care. Lisa, did there ever come a time when you agreed to be publicly identified as the friend that E. Jean was talking about? She says, yeah, there was. After E. Jean invited Carol and I to lunch with her in New York, with New York Times reporters who wanted to write about what happened to her, I was named in the New York Times. Right. So, yeah, it's in 2019. They've got another election coming up. Hey, you remember that phone call I made to you back in the 1990s about Trump attacking me? He's like, oh, yeah, I remember it exactly. Exactly. Now that you mention it, I do remember it exactly. Yes. Oh, it's coming back to me. Exactly in 1995 or 1996, sometime in between one of those 2 years, 28 years ago. Got it. Perfect. Yeah. Great. We're going to sue him now. Perfect. We got the whole team together. Birnbach says, Megan Tuhey interviewed me and Miss Martin in my apartment. They put it on the Daily. I was very active on Twitter at that time, and I received a lot of anti-Semitic attacks after the interview. Everything's an attack. I know. Everything is horrendous. What did you think of the book, Lisa? She says, well, I wasn't into the mix of travelogue and hard stories. Are you mentioned in the book? She says, I'm one of 3 people that she dedicated the book to. And our wedding shopping trip for Lauren, E. Jean's niece, and the Bergdorfs. Says, Lisa, did you think of the assault? Talking about this? No, that was about Lauren. Now, her attorney is asking her, this is E. Jean Carroll's attorney, is saying, Lisa, did you do media about Donald Trump's assault? She says, yes, I did. I did NPR, I did CNN, and I did Anderson Cooper. And we have that segment. So let's see what she sounded like when she did show up at Anderson Cooper to discuss this case.
As she immediately told two close friends about the incident. Both of those friends have talked on the record, corroborating the conversations they had, but they talked off camera to the New York Times. Now, one of those friends, Lisa Birnbach, has decided to talk with me about what happened in her first television interview. I spoke with her earlier. First of all, how do you know E. Jean Carroll?
E. Jean was the best friend of the girlfriend of my former husband's former partner.
It rolls off the tongue.
Exactly,
wow, yeah.
Exactly. So we met at some social gathering at this guy's apartment.
So you've known E. Jean Carroll for how long?
I would say about 29 years.
Okay.
And I'm basing that on when I was pregnant, and
Right.
I think I was
so
pregnant with my son when I met her. So.
And you had actually, had known Donald Trump back in those days.
I wouldn't say that I knew him. I would say that I interviewed him in either December of 1995 or January of 1996 because he allowed me to be the first journalist to see Mar-a-Lago as it was making its debut as a club instead of just his summer or winter house.
So do you remember the day E. Jean called you?
I remember that it was dinner time. I lived on 93rd Street then. I had, based on when it must have been in 1996, I had a 6-year-old and a 2.5-year-old. And like many phone calls at dinner time, there must have been a lot of...
Didn't that transcript say 3?
Wait, hold on. Put that down. Okay, what were you saying? You know, I mean, I was a distracted mom of 2 little kids and had other stuff going on as well. So I remember
so you don't pay much attention to your friend getting attacked by
talking
Trump.
to me very fast, very breathlessly, laughing too, and telling me the story of meeting Donald Trump outside or right inside Bergdorf.
Was she calling you from the street? Because she said that when she left Bergdorf Goodman, she went to her bag, picked up a phone, and...
I think she was, yeah. Yeah. And why me? Why did she call me? I think either because I had just written this story and she knew I'd just spent time with him, or because I had a very easy phone number. And she said she remembered my number. In fact, she still remembers it. So that might have been it. I mean...
Do you remember what...
So she writes an article about Trump, and E. Jean Carroll, the first person that comes to her mind when she's allegedly attacked by Trump, is to call somebody else who wrote about Trump, maybe because that person might be interested in another story about Trump. There's no real other reason that she called, other than maybe her phone number is easy to remember. So not a good friend at all. In fact, the call was haphazardly received in the middle of her kids.
She said?
Yes, some of it. She said, Lisa, you won't believe what happened. And she said, I was walking through the door, Bergdorf's, and
this is a
who said hello
show.
to me. It was Donald Trump. And he said, are you the high advice lady? And I said, hi, real estate guy. And he said, you're so smart. Why don't you give me advice on a present? And then she told me how she tried to interest him in stuff on the first floor, which made sense, you know. It was kind of a cute, meet cute, and a interesting thing to do with someone who is kind of a New York character. And then how they got upstairs on the escalator. I think he likes escalators. And then how they got into the lingerie department. At this point, I thought my memory is a little blurry on the fact that
Yeah.
I thought she was in the dressing room by herself and he broke down the door, pushed the door in. But apparently, as she told you, he followed her in and she thought she was having, kind of a play date with.
It's not just apparently. Those are pretty important details. Did she tell you that he broke the door down and then came in and attacked her? That's different than her walking in and sort of inviting him in there, if it happened at all. But these are how you break down lies. You catch people in their little inconsistencies as the story conveniently changes time and time again as the years move on, which is why you don't prosecute cases that are old. The reason we have statute of limitations and don't allow this type of stuff on, because evidence is spoiled. It gets terrible as time goes by. And here she said it herself. Can't even really remember. So much of people who are just telling a story about Donald Trump. It's like the game of telephone that you play. You say one thing in the end of it, something vulgar at the other end. These games are wild. But this is essentially more hearsay. Just like I had a phone call 28 years ago.
Him. It seems like she was still laughing and not scared. And what I do remember E. Jean repeating many times was, he pulled down my tights, as if that were the worst of all of it.
She repeated that several times.
Several times.
Was she laughing in the phone call to you?
A
Because she
little.
said she had been laughing initially in the phone call.
She was a little. Again, the laughter, nervous or adrenaline or whatever it was, plus he pulled down my tights, made it seem like it was awkward and bad, but maybe not as bad as it turned out to be. And then she told me how he pushed her against the wall and pinned her, I guess, with his shoulder.
Huh.
And it hurt. And also, she had just had maybe head trauma. I mean, not a doctor, but maybe
She said when he pushed her, she bumped her head against the wall.
Yes, it hurt. And then he, with his free hands, managed to penetrate her in some form. So she said that, and I think at this point...
She said he had penetrated
Yes.
with his penis.
Yes. And at that point, she said she wasn't sure how far,
Feed on the stream. Let's try this one.
To knee him, I think, and leave. Now, at that point, I definitely left the dinner table because I didn't want to say what I was about to say to her. Stop it, put that down. E. Jean, that's rape. He raped you. No. It was 5 minutes of my life.
You used that word to her, that this is rape.
Yeah, that's the word that came to mind. That's the concept that it seemed like it was rape.
When you said to her that that's rape,
Yeah.
because she still doesn't use that word.
She hates that word. I didn't even understand that until now. But she didn't say, she demurred and she said, no, we were fighting. Forget it. Don't tell anyone. Will not speak of this again. I said, you should go to the police. Let's go to the police. I will take you to the police. And she said, no. I just want to go home and take a shower and go to bed. And even though I'm a bit younger than E. Jean, I sometimes feel like the mom in our relationship. And I said, well, come to my house and I'll feed you and, we'll take care of you. No, I just want to go home. But she asked me to keep this a secret, and I kept it a secret.
You never spoke. Did you ever speak to her about it again?
Never.
Really?
Never again.
Never.
There was
Until 2019, when Trump's running again and George Conway's in her ear and Reid Hoffman is funding the whole thing, then suddenly pops out of the woodwork. Hey, guess guess who this is? I have no idea who this is. Hey, it's E. Jean Carroll. I remember you. Hey, we've got this little scheme we're concocting. Can you come be a witness in my trial? You're like, yeah, perfect. I hate Donald Trump.
Never a follow-up phone call saying, look, you really should go to the police?
No, no, I never called her again about it. I went back to chicken nuggets and, you know.
Did you know that she had called her other friend?
No, and nor did I know. No, it wasn't my story. It was her story. Apparently, she told Carroll Martin the next day.
Used to be a local anchor in New York.
Correct, a lovely local anchor with whom a colleague of E. Jean's on America's Talking cable network, and she told her in person maybe the next day or the day after, also swore her to secrecy. Now, Carroll had a whole different attitude towards the episode, and she told her so. Don't tell anybody. This guy has lawyers up the gazoo, and he'll sue you, and he'll deny it, and he'll make it uncomfortable for you. So between my well-meaning advice and Carroll's well-meaning advice, E. Jean took really Carroll's advice and kept quiet about it. And I was startled that she told the story.
I'll be right back with more of my interview with Lisa Birnbach. We discuss why E. Jean Carroll didn't come forward with her claims in 2016 when then candidate Trump was running for president.
All right, so we've got that clip. Now we'll go back to the trial. Now that we know what she sounds like and who she is and a little bit more about her story, let's tune back into this. So, did you do media about this, Lisa? She says, yeah, I did. Anderson Cooper, we just played the clip. Lisa, did you write about this on Facebook? She says, well, gosh, I haven't been on Facebook for some 5 years, but yeah, I probably did. I actually had a podcast too. It's called 5 Things, which we'll come back to during cross-examination. Lisa, on your podcast, did you talk about Donald Trump? Oh yeah, we did. Did you talk about him as being a narcissistic psychopath and Vladimir Putin's agent? Lisa, this is from her own counsel. And as we talk about here, this is called drawing the sting. They know that her direct testimony, if this is not addressed now, Trump's lawyers are going to beat her up badly with this. And so they're getting it out now. Did you call Trump a narcissistic psychopath on your podcast? Did you call him Vladimir Putin's agent? She says, probably, yeah. And my guests were not fans of Donald Trump either. She says, also, I said those things right after the January 6th insurrection at the Capitol. Trump's lawyers, objection! Judge, it's not an insurrection. You can't call it that. Nobody's been charged with insurrection. That is overly prejudicial response. They object. What does the judge do? Overruled. It was an insurrection. Get out of here. So counsel says, Lisa, did you say that the cult of Trump will decline and he will be dealing with lots of lawsuits, maybe like this one? She said, yes. She said, the guy had done a lot of bad things. I was hoping he would have to account for them. And you had a podcast, right? Yeah. When did your podcast end? She said, when Joe Biden became president. And if you go over to YouTube, you can actually find her podcast there. And let's pull it up. And you can see that she does have quite a bit of content there. This is what it looks like. She's got Abigail Tucker. Al Franken was on. Somebody named Kenneth Cole. Jennifer Taub. We have Gloria Rubin. And a lot of other people I don't even recognize. But Frank Figliuzzi, you know him. Mary Trump, you know her. And a lot of other people who are, like Lawrence O'Donnell, aligned in one direction. against a particular individual. So she says, my podcast ended when Joe Biden became president. That's when all of those stopped. So they say, Lisa, why are you testifying here today? Trump's lawyer objects. This is irrelevant, Your Honor. Oh, overruled. Pipe down. I'm here because my friend is telling the truth. Yeah. Counsel, no further questions. The judge says, all right, we're going to do a 15-minute break. And we fast forward through it. Now, Trump's lawyer is back up. Judge says, Mr. Tacopina, cross-examination. He says, Lisa, I'm looking at your records here. Is it true you only contribute to Democrats? Is that right? I think I may once have contributed to a pro-choice Republican. I'm not sure about that. He says, well, I'm sure about it. Let me go to the deposition that we had with you. He grabs a paper, he flips it open. It says here on page 37, it says, you said only to Democrats. Do you see that? She says, oh yeah, guess I said that. So it's fair to say you're not a fan of Donald Trump, Lisa? She says, yeah, that's right. In fact, on Facebook, you said, does it get worse than Trump? This slime ball? Did you say this? I've never felt the hatred I feel toward this person. Deranged. I've never felt the hatred I feel toward this person. You put that in writing and post it on Facebook, you psychopathic person? She says, yeah, maybe. Trump's lawyer says, on your podcast, Lisa, with Kurt Anderson, which you can go listen to, I'm sure, you said you think about Trump every hour, quote, when I sleep. Is that right? And when I sleep is when you think about Trump? She starts laughing in court. She's like, yeah. And he goes, did you say that, Lisa? She goes, yeah, I did. You've never hated a person worse, and you think about him when you sleep. Wow. And with Alexandra Pelosi, when you had her on your show, you said that Trump is like herpes. Did you say that? And she did say that. We have the clip. I dug it up today, and this is what it sounds like from her podcast with Alexandra Pelosi.
You're listening to 5 Things with Lisa Birnbach.
Hi, it's Lisa Birnbach. Do you want to see the Aaron Sorkin version of the election and this year, or do you want to see it made by the director of Parasite? I feel like I've been an unpaid extra for almost 4 years, and I'm done.
Oh.
I'm done with his voice. I cannot listen to Donald Trump speak. I feel like it irritates an infection, or he is an infection. Maybe that's just me. I just can't wait for this to be over. And I am saying this because it's not going to be over soon. No matter what, he'll be president till January. God help us. And you know what? We're going to hear him. We're going to hear him forever. He's part of who we are now. He's like herpes. We got him and we can't get rid of him. But you know what? We just have to be patient. We cannot let the urge. People are saying they've waited 4 years to vote. And that's a good point. I mean, we just have to be patient. We won't know the answers right away.
Yeah, like herpes. So I don't know what life experience she has to make analogies like that. But okay, right. You see the type of people. This is what they do. I can't sleep. I'm thinking about him. And I've never hated somebody so much as this man. He's like an infection in my body that I can't get rid of. And these are the people who are working against Trump's team here. So the judge cuts him off, says Lisa, you said Trump is like herpes. Is that right? Apparently, there's an objection. And the judge cuts him off. And Tacopina says, Your Honor, this is ridiculous. This is evidence of her bias. She called him an STD. Can I ask about this, please? He says, you don't say, like it's evidence of bias. You don't say. But it's a compound question, so I'm not going to allow it in. So he's getting him on technicalities, right? You ask two questions together. And I don't even see that in the transcripts. But in other words, this judge is just, in my opinion, protecting this case and this witness and not letting Trump's team make an argument. And Trump's team chronicled that in a video we published yesterday. Judge Kaplan says, you don't say, but it's a compound question. And he says, all right, I guess I'll move on. So with Chris Whipple, Lisa, on your podcast, on another episode, you said that the cult of Trump will decline and he'll deal with lawsuits. Remember that? You said something like they think he'll run for president, and that's crap or something. And you said that Trump is demented and he's a Russian agent. He's bad. Did you remember saying that? Did you make that statement? She says yes. And Trump's defense says, in your residence with Miss Carroll president, judge says, you've promoted her. President, he corrects himself. I mean present. In your residence with Miss Carroll present, he asks a question. And she says, I don't remember the year. He says, well, okay, let's go to the deposition. You were asked if you forgot the year. Carroll's lawyer says, objection, it's sustained. He says, hey, Tacopina, you didn't lay any foundation here. Here's what the question was. It was off page 45. Looks like they go back to the record. Is it your testimony, Lisa, that it never came up in your mind? Answer, it did not come up. Trump says, well, that's why I brought it up, Judge. And he says, sorry, that's why I sustained the objection. So I don't know exactly what happened there, but we move on. So he now goes back to Lisa and he says, okay, Lisa, so you do remember it now, do you not? And the judge says, remember what? And he says, the incident, Judge, at Bergdorf's. She says, well, it came back to me. I remember it now. Trump and his team holds this up. He says, what is this? Looks like it's defendant's DI. She says, well, that's an email from Miss Carroll about our event at the Wing. He says, okay, so you wrote the main thing is to sell books in this email, right? And she says, yeah, she was on a book tour. That's how writers make money. The main thing is to sell books. Yeah, of course. That's all I have, Your Honor. Nothing further. So then the plaintiffs come back for E. Jean Carroll with a redirect. They say, Lisa, Mr. Brandt here, apparently it wasn't Tacopina, it was Brandt. Mr. Brandt just asked you about the book tour. And she says, yeah, due to security concerns, actually, she could not do a book tour. Why not? Followers of Mr. Trump would, objection, overruled. Trump's lawyers try to keep that out of there. The judge, of course, lets it in. Oh, his supporters were threatening her. That's why she couldn't do the book tour. Lisa, in 1996, was Donald Trump known as a political figure? No, not at all. In this message, you said that Megyn doesn't like sardies. What was this lunch about? That was the interview with the New York Times reporter. And in 1996, Trump was not political at all. He was a real estate guy who harassed a lot of women. Brandt, for Trump's defense, he says, Your Honor, move to strike. 403, it's too harmful, it's too prejudicial, it's not helpful. He harassed a lot of women. So the judge says, yeah, you're right, I got to keep that one out. Disregard the part after a real estate guy, all right, who harassed a lot of women. So he just like cut that part out. Can't say that, strike that. Carroll's lawyer says, Lisa, would you lie to stop Donald Trump from being president? She says, No, I wouldn't. Nothing further. So a brief recross comes back. Trump's team says, all right, Lisa, in 2019, Trump was a political figure, wasn't he? Yeah. He was the president, wasn't he? Yeah. Nothing further. Next witness. And we are done with Lisa Birnbach. And so we wrap up that witness. Lisa Birnbach, the first contact from E. Jean Carroll, had a very brief 4-minute phone call while she was heating up chicken nuggets for her children. Never talked to E. Jean Carroll again till 2019, when it came time to open up a new avenue of attack. And here we are. So then we have our next witness. The next witness in Trump trial day 5 is Jessica Leeds. You see a photograph of her here. She is a woman accusing Donald Trump of attacking her on an airplane. And just like E. Jean Carroll's case, we have a hard time pinning down the date on this one too. Apparently it was in 1978 or 1979. Who knows? She was age 37 allegedly, and she had a hard time talking about her case too. And the reason why it's important to pin these dates down is because it's hard to defend them if you don't know the dates. Trump or anybody accused of a crime can say, I wasn't there at that time. I wasn't here to corroborate your claims. But if it's a big, broad window of time, very difficult to defend. And so she is called in to court for testimony by E. Jean Carroll's lawyer. Here's how it starts. Your Honor, the plaintiff calls Jessica Leeds into court today. Miss Leeds, can you tell me about your job? She says, yeah, I am a stockbroker, or used to be a stockbroker, at 20 Broad Street near Wall Street. And where did you meet Donald Trump? She says, I was on a plane. I think 1979 or 1978, give or take. I was flying from Dallas or Atlanta, don't even know the location. It was midday and I was 37 years old. They post a photograph up there. Her hair is long. She said, I got a weird invite when I was on the plane. I was the only woman there and I got invited up to first class. And Donald Trump introduced himself to me and said, Jessica, did you know of him? She says, no, I didn't. I was living in Connecticut. But they served a very nice meal, as Braniff was known for, on the plane. And what happened next, Jessica? Donald Trump grabbed me and groped me. It was like he had 40 zillion hands. He put his hand up my skirt, and that gave me a jolt. I wiggled out and stormed back onto coach. Did you say anything to anyone? Or did anyone say anything? The guy in the aisle, his eyes were saucers. Counsel says, have you given any interviews about this, Jessica? Yeah, I was there with Anderson Cooper. And did you talk to Anderson about how long this whole incident lasted? She said, yeah, I did. I told Anderson Cooper it was 15 minutes. Whoa. But in fact, it was seconds. And we have a copy of that interview. Let's listen to what she said, specifically with Anderson Cooper, so we can validate her claims as soon as this video loads. Any minute. Let's try it again. Let's try it again. Sometimes this application just gets a little bit wonky. If not, I think I have another way to get it. Hang on a second. Oh, here it is. Yeah, there it is. All right, it's loading up.
Tonight
All right.
Tonight is Jessica Leeds.
What the heck is going on over here? All right, let me see if I can just get it. From another source.
Jessica, were you surprised? Tonight is Jessica Leeds. Jessica, were you surprised?
All right, give me a quick second. I'm trying to dig it up. It's also on Twitter. I think sometimes that app is just, the videos get a little wonky.
Surprised to hear the president essentially kind of using the same word tonight.
All right, well, we'll just let that load up, I guess. I mean, I don't know what the heck it's doing. But anyways. Yeah, all right, so we'll come back to that. Anyway, so we'll go back. It says, from Leeds, have you given interviews about this? She says, yeah. I said it was 15 minutes, but in fact, it was seconds. Now, Leeds, did you ever tell anyone about this? She says, no, I didn't. It never occurred to me. Says it was Anderson Cooper who asked Trump the question during the debate with Hillary. So I agreed to be on his show. I had written a letter in the New York Times, and Megan Tuhey called me, said she'd be a reporter, she'd send a reporter over, and so he came over and they brought over a photographer. Says, I don't know if you've ever had the experience of picking up a newspaper and seeing your face on the front page. Wow, I was amazed. Says, what's this? This is the debate where Anderson Cooper asked him if he had harassed a woman. Plaintiff offers that as an exhibit. Trump's defense team objects. Says, all right, let's look at the transcript. It's only 2 minutes and 27 seconds. And this is the video of Cooper asking about the Hollywood Access tape. Trump says, hey, look, Cooper, this was just locker room talk, okay? We have a world of ISIS chopping off heads, drowning people in steel cages. I will knock the hell out of ISIS. Cooper says, are you saying that what you said on the bus 11 years ago, you never did that? He says, no, I never did. Now, back in court, the plaintiff asks Carroll's witness, Miss Leeds, Jessica, did you watch the debate? She says, yeah, I did. I was furious. What was done to me, there was foreign press, even from Japan and France, a couple more appearances on CNN and MSNBC. What was the response? She explains. Says, I don't do Facebook, but people say thank you. When did the New York Times run your story, Jessica? She says, it was October 2016. I heard he said that he would never attack me. But he was looking at a 76-year-old woman, not that 37-year-old I was. The judge says, okay, we're going on a break, and the thread will continue. And so let's see if that video loaded up at all.
Is Jessica Leeds. Jessica, were you surprised to hear the president essentially kind of using the same words against Ms. Carroll that he used against you, essentially talking about appearances? That you know, he said she's not my type about Carroll.
I was not surprised. He is set in his ways, and he really needs a new script, but he's not going to change.
It's interesting that with Ms. Carroll that his first thing was...
All right. So for whatever reason, it's just not working. So we'll just continue on. Now, the trial fast forward through lunch, and we're back. Tacopina asks the judge, he says, Your Honor, there's something we need to speak with you about. Can we have a sidebar? The judge says, jurors, as you were walking in, the lawyers told me we need to have a discussion, so please bear with us, and we'll see you outside. Judge Kaplan says, okay, proceed. Sidebar's over. So they worked out whatever it was. Carroll's lawyer Ferreira now continues. He says, okay, Ms. Leeds, what is this? Says, well, that's the Trump rally at which he made his comments. Says, I got to ask that question over again. Do you recognize this CD that I'm holding up here? She says, yeah, it has my initials on it. Exhibit submitted. On the screen on C-SPAN, they have got Trump saying, they come up with people who say, I was with Donald Trump on an airplane in 1980. Believe me, she would not be my first choice, is what Trump said. Do you think that was about you? She says, I was sure it was me. Do you consider yourself a political activist, Jessica? She says, yes, I do. I vote in every election. Whether I know anything or not, I vote. Perfect, uneducated voter. Are you in a party, Jessica? Yes, I am a Democrat. I contributed to Raphael Warnock and Stacey Abrams and whoever ran against Susan Collins. Have you spoken with Miss Carroll? Yeah, she interviewed me by Zoom. She's an acquaintance, I would say, not a friend. Did you ever speak with Donald Trump again? In 1981 at a fundraiser, I had a nice dress. Trump and Ivana, who was pregnant back then, they came up to me. Trump said, I remember you. You're that C from the airplane. She said it was like cold water over me. He walked away and I went home. Nothing further from the plaintiff. So then the judge says, all right, Tacopina, cross-examination from you. He says, all right, Jessica. So you didn't tell anyone for a year, but you're political? So you knew Donald Trump was talking about running, but you didn't say anything? Correct. And then when he ran, you talked about it to your book club. Is that true? Yeah. And during the debate, you said, what an a-hole. And you jumped up and down. Is that true at your debate club? You did an interview with the New York Times, and you said you hoped your story would influence the election against Trump. Is that what you said in an interview? She says, correct. And you also did an interview with NPR and with Audie Cornish, right? Yeah. And you did an interview with Democracy Now!, somebody called Amy Goodwin or Goodman. Yeah. And you don't want Donald Trump to regain the presidency, right? I don't. Now, can you give us an exact date when this happened to you? No, I can't. You don't remember where you were flying from? No, I do not. It's your story. A man introduced himself to you as being Donald Trump. Yeah, he was some random guy on a plane. And you told Anderson Cooper the tussle lasted 15 minutes? Yeah. Your story is that a passenger saw it too? Yeah. And when you say he touched your knee, objection sustained, the only word knee is coming from you, Tacopina. He says, okay, I'm not going to say the word knee. He says, okay, when he touched up your skirt, you didn't say anything when you got back to your seat? No. And you'd never heard of him, of Donald Trump, but you'd remembered the name for all those years? You didn't know about him before, but then after the attack, you discovered who he was back in 1979 or 8 or whenever it was? Yeah. And at the gala, you say Donald Trump next to his wife said the C word. He said the C word right next to his wife right in front of you. Is that right? Yeah. You say Donald Trump remembered you too, despite having shorter hair and different clothes. Objection sustained. You did an interview with Democracy Now!, didn't you? She says, yeah, I went to their studio. You said that you remember the details of this? Yeah. And you told Anderson Cooper specifically that it was 1979, didn't you? Yes. And you told Miss Carroll, though, a different date. You said it was either 1980 or 1979. Is that true? Yes. And you can't name one single witness here to corroborate your story, right? No. The judge interferes in his cross-examination and says, let's move on. I have not... He's allowed to do his cross-examination. The judge cuts him off. Let's move on. This is good cross-examination, and he cuts him off. Again, this is taking place in front of the jury. Right in front of the jury. They're watching this judge lampoon and essentially condemn Tacopina's testimony. Are you finished yet? These questions are terrible. They're irrelevant. They don't matter. Let's move on. Gosh. These are the most consequential questions because they shatter Jessica's story. No date, no witnesses, didn't even know Trump. Then suddenly it's Trump. Doesn't know where she was flying to, didn't tell anybody about it. So Tacopina gets yelled at by the judge. Stop your questioning. You're making our case look more ridiculous. So he says, all right, nothing further, Your Honor. So Tacopina says, I'm done here. Fine. All right. If I can't ask my questions, I might as well just sit down. All right. So then the plaintiff comes back out for redirect. They're going to rehabilitate her now. They say, all right, Jessica, you remember every detail of this? She says, yes, I do. Why not tell your bosses? My bosses would just say, that's too bad. How about lunch? And it was a good job. It was a good job, even though your bosses don't care you got assaulted on an airplane? So why did you call it a pass? A pass? It's easier to think of it that way. To be clear, do you now consider it a pass? Objection. Overruled, of course. No, it was not a pass. Do you think you brought on what he did? No. I don't know what he perceived. I think he was just bored. Nothing further. Any recross? No. Next witness. So that is the second accuser who has now been brought out, saying that Donald Trump did something very similar to her, even though she did something very similar to E. Jean Carroll. Didn't document this, report it to police, didn't tell any friends about it. Nothing. Doesn't remember when it happened or where she was going. Has a strong animus against Donald Trump, and then now pops up out of the woodwork to go and support this new claim. And it carries on. So we continue. We've got other witnesses, quick ones in Robert Salerno. We touch upon him briefly, and then we get into our expert witness, who's going to be Leslie Leibowitz, a clinical psychologist, as the trial moves on in day 5. So the next witness is up. Plaintiff E. Jean Carroll calls Robert Salerno. Hi, Robert. Thanks for being here today. Robert, are you retired? He says, yeah. And where were you back in the mid-90s? A long time ago. He says, Bergdorf Goodman. How many floors did Bergdorf Goodman have then, Robert? Yeah, he says there were 10. 8 of them were accessible by escalator to the public. And how big were the fitting rooms, Robert? They were large. On the 4th floor, they had fax machines. Jackie Kennedy used to come and do business there. Were the escalators open or were they walled off? No, I remember they were walled off. There were structural walls around them. And you saw Donald Trump come into this store? Yeah, I saw him once or twice. No further questions. They take a break. We fast forward and we're back. Trump's lawyer is up with cross-examination. Says, all right, Robert, you say Donald Trump came into your store and you saw him in the women's wear section of Bergdorf's. Is there a separate, sustained as to form, strike it? He doesn't like the complexity of this question. So he says, all right, sheesh, Judge, let me break it up. Where did you see Donald Trump in the 90s? 5th floor. He says that Bergdorf prided itself on providing attentive customer service. Is that true? He says, yeah, that's correct. Why were sales associates called personal shoppers? Why were sales associates called personal shoppers? Objection from Carroll's team. And judge says, sustained. This is all repetition. So once again, Trump's lawyers are getting into an area of question, and the judge cuts them off because it's being repetitious. I've not heard them talk about personal shoppers before. Maybe in other parts of this trial, but it doesn't feel repetitious to me. This is a brand new witness and a brand new line of questioning. Do you have any idea how many staff work there on Thursday night? The judge says, does he have any idea? Is that what you're asking right now? Is that where we are right now? He says, gosh, Judge, we're trying to probe his memory. Were you responsible for security? Yes. Did the topic of shoplifting ever come up? Objection, sustained. Not going to let him get into this either, because Trump's team wants to talk about this. How many people are there who might have been able to see this? How many personnel were on staff around this time when they alleged Trump went in there? What happened to the security footage, the VHS tapes? What happened to these personal shoppers? Would they greet somebody like Donald Trump and attend to his every need like they did with Jackie Kennedy? That's why they call them personal shoppers. We have questions about security personnel. Who's watching what? Did anybody become assigned to Donald Trump? All these questions. And one question might be about the topic of shoplifting. Did it ever come up? Judge doesn't want to get into that. Objection, sustained. Were there any measures to ensure clients wouldn't steal merchandise? He tries it a different way. Objection, sustained. Trump's lawyer says, hey, Robert, there were cameras on the first floor. Is that true? Yeah. And back in the day, the VHS tapes, were those taped over? Objection. She says, well, I object to back in the day. Back in the day, right? So the judge is getting on them for kind of sloppy language, like back in the day. But you understand what that means. He could have said, in the 90s, the VHS tapes were taped over, and they wouldn't have objected to that, or maybe they would have from some other reason. He sustains it as to being objection to back in the day, and he doesn't try it again. I'm not going to try it. He's not going to rephrase it and say, okay, back in the 90s, were the VHS taped over? They move on. So that is a very, very short witness, which is Robert Salerno, the individual who was there. Don't have a photograph for him. Retired. Was not asked about other details about the setup of the store, which would be very useful for Trump's team to know about. Security, camera footage, other people who might have been attending to Donald Trump. All irrelevant, according to the judge, because the only thing that matters is their story, not anybody else's. So that is Robert Salerno. And then we have one final witness came in on day 5 of the Trump trial. Her name is Dr. Leslie Leibowitz. She's going to be the expert witness, a clinical psychologist who's going to come in and talk about trauma and explain to us why E. Jean Carroll did all the things that she did, which many of us would call questionable. She'll say, no, it's all perfectly explainable. This is what happens in trauma situations. A little bit more about Leibowitz from her website. This is called Guilford.com. It says that she is a clinical psychologist in private practice in Newtown Center, Massachusetts. She consults extensively in forensic contexts and provides training in the area of community and military settings, done Air Force sexual assault response, and previous research was about examining the aftermath of sexual violence and all of the things. And so that is who we are listening to today. She comes back in. The plaintiff calls her in. Our next witness, Dr. Leslie Leibowitz, clinical psychologist. Carroll's counsel says, thanks for being here, doctor. She says, yeah, happy to be here. Do you have any specializations here? I do. Trauma. All right, well, we're going to talk a lot about that today and probably tomorrow too. Can you tell me about your background? She says, yeah, I worked on the issue of abuse in the military. And how many times have you been engaged to work on this case? And how many times have you then withdrawn to work on a case and then withdraw? She says 5 or 6 times. Some of those were prosecutions for the R, but I did not feel confident in it. Got on the case and then got off the case. Another time I got on the case, it was a murder case. They thought trauma might explain it, but I thought that there could be another explanation, like a personality disorder. In this case, doctor, were you asked to provide an expert opinion on E. Jean Carroll here? She says, yeah, I was. And what did you conclude? I decided and came to the conclusion that she has suffered from painful memories, a diminishment in how she thought about herself, avoidance symptoms, curtailing her romantic, intimate life. So, well, we're going to talk a lot more about that, but not today. Says, Your Honor, we're going to conclude here. This is a good time to pause, and the jury is excused. Carroll's lawyer says, Judge, we're moving along pretty nicely here. So we will rest on Thursday, midday, and be done. So we'll have a full day of testimony on Wednesday from her with cross-examination, and then probably rest on Thursday. Mr. Tacopina, is Mr. Trump going to be coming to this trial? He says, no, he's not coming. All right, well, that's his call. Tacopina says, Your Honor, I see we have Miss Carroll's sister queued up to come in and testify. What's the point of her testimony? I'm just teeing it up for you guys. And the judge says, I'll do a charging conference either Friday or Monday. I'll let you know. But that is it for the day. The jury leaves, and Inner City Press will have more on this later, along with a booklet at the end of the trial. Make sure you're following him over at Inner City Press, doing a great job reporting from New York, where the trial is underway. And so, my friends, we covered some good ground on the Trump trial, day 5. We saw Dr. Leslie Leibowitz called in to testify, Robert Salerno, former employee at Bergdorf, Jessica Leeds, another Trump accuser, called, and Lisa Birnbach, author, and the first person that E. Jean Carroll contacted after the incident occurred. And of course, we'll be back here tomorrow with day 6 to see what else we have in store. Now it's time to hear from you and to see what you have to say about all of this and more from our friends on YouTube, on Rumble, on Twitter, which we forgot yesterday. I apologize about that one. What a doofus. But we have some super chats, and we have some Rumble rants, and we have some locals tips. And let's see what you have to say about it. And thank you, everybody, for subscribing and following along. My goodness, we crossed 250,000 subscribers today. Whoo! Thank you for joining us in this wild ride. It has been a ton of fun. I'm so grateful for each and every one of you, and I appreciate you joining us as we continue to navigate these waters. Ton of fun. But let's see what you have to say about this. Here on YouTube, we had one from Voice of the People, which we'll come back to. Thank you for both of those. Says I missed one. Thank you for the reminder. We'll come back to that, or Voice, we'll probably hit that tomorrow. Let's hit that one tomorrow, maybe for members only or the after party. Sal C says, thank you for being very informative, doing a great job reviewing and explaining these cases with humorous anecdotes. And thank you, Sal C, for sending that one in. We try to have fun. You know, these things are sometimes pretty heavy cases. And we try to make them a little bit lively. So thanks for being here, Sal, and thanks for the support. Ray K says, Rob used the wrong cables on the new setup. God, I know. It's like never-ending problems. Dolphin fan giving me the shout-out on the sound. Thank you, Dolphin. STFU, thank you both for those. It's, I don't really know what the problem is. I honestly think it's the internet now, but it's never-ending. So, STFU says, I would avoid, yeah, well, we're going to leave that one. STFU says, are there any DNC witnesses who don't self-impeach? From STFU. Well, no, they all like to talk about these things, right? They all get on these media circuits and they just communicate constantly. Hey, they think they're out there saving America by talking bad about Trump, and then they just grab their clips and they say, you're kind of a TDSer, aren't you? And it turns out they are. Thank you, STFU. We have American Patriot says, was this judge on the mock jury? He is something. He certainly is something, isn't he, American Patriot? He is cutting off the defense every which way. I don't think I've ever seen anything quite so one-sided. STFU is explaining to us, personal shopper, says never leaves the side of the customers. Right. So if Trump, great point. So from STFU, if there was a personal shopper for Donald Trump, wouldn't that person have known that he came in and have been attentive to him? Good question. And It's a good question. Yeah, it's a good question. We'll have to see if they are allowed to bring it up at all. Zutral says, hey, Rob, congrats. So Zutral sent in a tip over on Locals and says, congrats on the 250,000. Says, wish the dono was the exact to scale. And the dono was 2.5, so $2.50. Says, I wish it was to scale with a lot more zeros on it. From Zutral in the house over on Locals, which is very funny. Yeah, I'd be okay with that too. You know, if you had an extra 250 grand to drop in as a super chat. Okay. Is there an option for that? If you want to drop a $250,000 super chat, I'm sure we can figure that out. Thank you very much for that, Zutral. Let's say hello to our friends on Rumble and over on Twitter before we wrap up the day, my friends. And I see who's here. We have Dog Digger says one day we'll all be judged by our creator. That is true. Nick Danger says, and Fox just became part of the CCM. Mama Suri is in the house telling about things that she was doing when she was 13. Good to see you, Mama Suri. JP Smart's in the house. Jan X over there. Indoctrination's over there. Good to see everybody. And hey, Curtis Bartle's been a member for 10 months. Says, will Congress intervene? That's a good question. So Curtis Bartle, I think, is bringing up a point. We made a video earlier about Donald Trump asking Congress to step in and to take some action about these investigations going on all around the country. Of course, we've got New York City, Manhattan, prosecuting a former president and a presidential candidate. We have Georgia, the fanniest of all of them, Willis, prosecuting Donald Trump or investigating him in Georgia. We've got special counsel. We've got all these civil cases flying around. Will Congress step in to do something about it? I doubt it. Let's be real. As long as the opponent is Donald Trump, they're going to look the other way on most of this, I think. Although we do see some activity with some contingent of Congress. We have Jim Jordan and the Oversight Committee. They're asking about a lot of this. And there's more coming out about Anthony Blinken and about all the cover-ups that were taking place in the months leading up to the election. And so, you know, maybe as the dam starts to break a little bit further, there will be more that the Republicans are willing to do. But right now, it feels like they're not that interested in it. They would rather still play the same old patty cake game of debt ceiling, and global war, never-ending war, and just spending money and going to war. Hey, Mark. Thanks, Mark. Mark sent in another one. Says, based on the R accusation and the lack of security, could Trump or the Bergdorfs also sue? You like counter sue her for, they'd have to allege that she did something, right? Like, what did she do? So the closest analog, Mark, and thanks for the super chat, is they are countersuing Michael Cohen. So, you know, Cohen initiated this whole thing, brought a prosecution. Trump and his team, they sued Cohen, I think, for $500 million. And they said that you breached something. And in this case, it was his attorney-client privilege, his duty of confidentiality, and he also breached a non-disclosure agreement. So there was something to sue for. The fact that she initiated litigation alone is not enough, but I mean, theoretically, you know, he could sue her for defamation and say that thing never happened. You know, none of this ever happened and you're defaming me. But that hasn't been his MO. I mean, I think he theoretically could, but he need, I think, a little bit more substantive. Yeah, so the other thing that's happening, K. Bean brought up a great point in the chat. Great comment, K. Bean. Says Stormy had to cough it up, right? But I don't think he sued her, right? She was suing him and then he won damages, or he won attorney's fees at the conclusion of the case. And I could be wrong about that. I don't remember that one specifically. But I thought she went after him, he defended, then he turned around and said, this is all, you know, ridiculous. And then I get attorney's fees. And then she appealed the attorney's fees. And that's what went up to the Ninth Circuit. And then he ended up winning money over that one. So I think he's in you know, still in defense mode. And that's probably the best strategy. You know, until he maybe wins the presidency and then disbands the FBI and recreates his own. Then we'll see whatever happens, if that happens. All right. And so those, my friends, were the amazing Rumble rants and super chats. Thank you for sending those in. And thank you to Locals and our friend Zutral over there for the, what is it? 250,000th. What's the numbers on that one? I don't know. Let's see who is over on Twitter and jumping in over here. If my stuff will load. I don't know what it's doing. Let's see who's on Twitter, shall we? Are we even live over here? On Twitter? Yes, we are. All right, we have a couple comments. Danny McWilliams here says, tell us why you sold your law firm. So I could spend more time here with you, obviously. V says, Donald Trump put his teeny tiny clavicle grabbing hands all over my teeny tiny yellow polka dot bikini. And V says, ladies and gentlemen, may I present to you the moral of this case as demonstrated by what we've seen. We had 21 viewers on the screen. Amazing. V says, my IQ drops every time we have to listen to these people. Yeah. And Maya Nova says this is insane. And Silver Patriot has some comments about the judge as well, all over on Twitter. Come and check us out on Twitter and follow your friends over there on Twitter, the other free speech platform that is out there. But all right, my friends, that is it for us on the day. Now, if you are a member, we are going over to our member-only after party at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. We also want to invite you, if you're a YouTube member, check out on the YouTube app, check out the community post section, get the Telegram link, come and join us on Telegram where we have our members-only chat. It's a ton of fun. Watchingthewatchers.locals.com is the best place to be. Join us on Telegram where the chat never ends. We also want to thank our friends at Field of Greens for sponsoring the show here. And it's a great place to go get your health products, get your actual green products, get your lean products to lean up a little bit, sleep, movement, joints, all sorts of stuff. Fieldofgreens.com. Use code Robert at checkout so you can save 15% when you go over there. Remember, the vegetables want to be eaten. We also have this mind map software, which is available and fun to use. I use it for all sorts of stuff. You can create your own mind map at spotlightlawyer.com/mindmap. Create a free account. I use it for personal development, projects. I obviously use it for the show, keep my thoughts organized. I'm sure you can find a great use for it as well. Want to thank our mods and moderators who mod down the fort for us and keep things nice and orderly. Our friends Vienticus Prime, K Bean in the house, Just Cause, Playing Hooky, Ronnie Cole, Zulu, Geomancy, Zach Nichols, John Allen, Janek, Dog Digger, and Donut Mind Me, all in the house, along with Sleepy Dog Lee, Geegum Geegum, who help keep the train on the tracks and keep this show nice and orderly. Nutter85 on Local says, what happened to the motion yesterday? Did he just throw it away? Is there any way, anything they can do legally to the judge? This is sickening to watch, says Nutter. The judge denied the motion for a mistrial, as far as my understanding is. I haven't seen a written order yet, but my understanding is he denied it because the trial is moving forward. And is there anything that can be legally done to the judge? Appealed, could appeal his rulings. You could impeach the judge. You could file a judicial ethical complaint against the judge, which will go nowhere. And impeachment will very unlikely happen. And an appeal will probably not go much of anywhere. So really what needs to happen is a political movement to recapture the Congress and demand that there are some changes to how this stuff works in America, so the legal system is not used to dogpile on political opponents of whoever is in charge, because that's going to wreck the country pretty rapidly. STFU says, oi, figure, did you see my post about Kim Gardner? No, I didn't. Well, we made a video about Kim Gardner. Was it different than that one? I don't remember. Hey, and we got a couple other things. Thanks for letting me know about this. Missed 2 super chats. Hey, Alex LaChance says, hey, so this came in from Alex LaChance, says, law student here, watching this trial while in law school is wild. Even my professors are stunned and unsure why the judge interjects like that. That's interesting. That is a very interesting report from Alex LaChance. Even professors are stunned and unsure why the judge interjects like that. Yeah, I think that that's a fair assessment. I don't know why he's doing that, other than the fact that he's been doing this for a long time and he feels like he has a license to do that. But it is entirely inappropriate. And that's just what we're seeing from very arm's length distance. I can't even imagine what it's like in the court. And we saw previously Joe Tacopina, one of the things that was reportedly he said was, I'm at a loss. And that's how I feel as we're sitting here reading it. So the fact that your law school professors are also a little bit stunned is interesting. Because when I think about law school professors, I think of them trying to make this fit, you know. No, it's fine. He's allowed to do that. This is a Trump trial. I had a lot of Trump wasn't in office when I was in law school, but I had a lot of very not Trump aligned type of professors. I had some great professors too. Mark Krausen, we got Mark. What's up, Mark? And we had Zutral and X the Eliminator said, Birnbach, she was my father's brother's nephew's cousin's former roommate. Yeah, and that's why she's a critical witness. Yeah, I knew her. It's like 7 degrees of separation from Kevin Bacon, right? Isn't that the one? No, it's like, yeah, we knew him, through 8 other people. Therefore, he's reliable and credible. Thank you, X the Eliminator. And that came in from STFU. Donut Mind Me sent another one from Janine Jost Ratke. And apparently there was a message there from Janine, but it didn't stick for whatever reason. But thank you, Janine. Janine Jost Ratke. And we had a couple from STFU. Jammy, welcome, Jammy B. Just became a supporter, became a new member. Amazing. And Sal C. Yes, we love you, Sal. Says, thank you for being informative, doing a great job. Appreciate you, Sal. And Voice of the People. Yes, so let's go back to Voice of the People's comment. Patrick Parker gifted 5 membos. Oh, my goodness. And Dolphin Fan gifted 5 memberships. Man, our morning members only chats are getting lit and fired up. Our locals is growing like crazy. Our YouTube membership is growing like crazy. We do our morning member only streams. We get to the stuff that we can't get to here, the smaller stories that we can't do the deep dive on, that we miss because we just run out of time here. So Dolphin Fan invited over Suzanne, Barcaro, Ben Capper, KD's in the house, and Lori all came over courtesy of Dolphin. And Patrick is bringing over D's Giblets. Welcome to the community, D's. RMF is here. Michael's here. Raquel is here. And Robin is in the house, courtesy of our friend Patrick Parker. Thank you very much for doing that, Patrick. And Dolphin Fan. So grateful for you guys. Our members are booming. We are filling up in the mornings, and it's a lot of fun. It's better when we do it together, rather than doing it alone. So we're glad that you join us on the member-only morning sessions. And somebody who is always there as a member in our morning chats is Voice of the People. And we forgot one. He sent this in this morning. Says, question, if the government wants a digital currency with an executive order and the Restrict Act gives the government full control over the internet, what's the point of crypto when they cut off your access to the market? It's a great question. So this is a great question, Voice of the People. And the answer is that if your money is on the exchanges, it's going to be very hard to pull your money out of the exchanges, right? Because the rails that interface between the crypto exchanges and the dollar will be severed. Like it'd be like converting your money from a dollar to a peso. The conversion mechanism will be removed. And so they could cut off your access to that. And in fact, if you've got your crypto still on the exchanges, they could theoretically just not give you that, just seize it like they seized gold. So one of the ways that people insulate themselves is by pulling that crypto off of the exchange into cold storage so that it's not really anywhere. So in other words, if you control your keys, you control your crypto, and then you can move your crypto, transact your crypto without any institutions at all. So let's say you pulled off some savings into a cold storage wallet, or you moved your keys off of the exchanges. The exchange goes down. The government says you can't use crypto anymore. Well, as long as you have an internet connection and your keys and your crypto, and you can access the internet and an app, then you can still use it in your transactions with other crypto holders. Now, you may not be able to take that money back up into, put it back into the dollar system, or convert it, or do other things depending on how draconian those rules are. But theoretically, it would still have value as an isolated asset, because the United States might make it difficult to use crypto. They might come after crypto pretty aggressively. We don't know. But if they do, that doesn't mean that every country will. And other countries, are not. Like, for example, El Salvador. And there are other havens for crypto that money might move to as a result of this clampdown, because people want freedom, and if the government clamps down your financial system, why is that? They don't want you to take your dollars, which will be losing value because it's going to be inflated into oblivion. If they're trying to stop you from getting out of the system, it's kind of a good reason to maybe have a backup plan, to maybe have something outside of the system, because if the system collapses, you want something else to latch onto. But that being said, right, there's a big concern that they cut it off before you can get your money out. So if you've got a ton of money on a crypto exchange, you might want to think about moving a portion of that off, or if it's on a questionable crypto exchange, and this is not financial advice, but if they're trying to stop you from getting off the ship, why is that? Troubling. So, all right, great question from Voice of the People, and thanks for the nice super chat that came in. And gold and silver, other very good solutions. And shout out to Donut Mind Me. Thank you for clipping all of these great messages, because I missed a bunch of those today. And I thought I had a handle on it, but apparently not. So thank you to Donut Mind Me. And I think, my friends, that is it for us on the day. We had another one come in from STFU on locals. Says the Kim Gardner stuff was context that was left out of your video. She has a long history of malpractice. Thank you for that, STFU. Yeah, we published a Kim Gardner video, I think this morning, and she's this Soros DA prosecutor who has a bad history of problems, and so she is now having to answer to some of her misdeeds, and that's been a fun case to watch. The judge scolded her, called her office a rudderless ship of chaos. That's a pretty powerful one. The judge often doesn't come out and call an entire prosecutor's office a rudderless ship of chaos. So we indulged in that one a little bit, as you can imagine. But all right, my friends, I think that is it for us on the day. Now, of course, our members, stick around. We're going to be doing our after party here for a little bit. And so even though we're going to go off here, we'll be right back in a quick minute. And we'd love to see you join us. But if not, we will be back here tomorrow to do it all again. It will be day 6 of the Trump trial. No doubt we'll continue to see more testimony from Dr. Leibowitz. We'll also hear from the Proud Boys trial, see if there's any new notes or a verdict. And we hope to see you right back here so that you can join us, so that together with your help, we can shine that big, beautiful spotlight of accountability and transparency down upon our system with the hope of finding justice. Make it a beautiful night, my friends. We'll see you right back here tomorrow. Bye-bye.